So we're going to take a look here at Module 3. Module 3 begins to discuss entrepreneurism. Most people understand that an entrepreneur is someone who starts their own business. This could be a radically new business that has never been seen before, or it could just be an advancement of a business that's already existed. For example, many people have opened up restaurants. Although restaurants have been around for generations, you'll see that people open up new ones and put their own little twist on it. Florida Virtual School wants us to use what is known as the Hunt characteristics to define entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are supposed to harness their vision, to think about what they can do to create a new idea or put their own mark on an old idea. They need to make sure that they do not underestimate the roadblocks and be prevented by the barriers that are placed in front of them. For example, entrepreneurs are going to be responsible for raising a considerable amount of money to start their own business. Now, some roadblocks are a little bit bigger than others. For example, if you wanted to start your own business, a sole proprietorship for pressure washing, that might require you to raise around $300 to buy a pressure washer. This is going to be substantially less than if you would like to try and open up your own business, such as a restaurant or a gas station, where you'd be required to pay a substantial amount for the mortgage each month. You also want to make sure that you tap into your network of people around you, people that can give you advice, people that have been there before, and people that can lead you or point you in the right direction of how to acquire new customers. And you need to make sure that you take your first step. Oftentimes, people are apprehensive or scared about opening up their own business, but you'll never know if you succeed unless you actually try. Florida Virtual School has given us a list of entrepreneurs that we can look at here. There have been many over the years and generations. They've done everything from advancing digital information technology to creating their own beauty industries or putting a Starbucks on pretty much every other corner. Some businesses were very large in popularity, where now they're starting to die off. We've seen inventions that have brought about advances in technology that were phenomenal at their day and age hundreds of years ago, whereas today they're not used at all. Florida Virtual School then begins to talk to us about the 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurial ability. The factors of production are required to make pretty much anything in our economy. Land is really nothing more than the natural materials that we use or take out of the earth in order to produce something. Labor are our workers, capital are the tools and equipment we use, and the entrepreneur is the person who comes up with the idea to mix these 4 things together. A local example could be Jeremiah's Italian Ice, where Jeremy in the mid-90s had an idea of taking Italian ice and changing it up a little bit for a smoother flavor and mixing it with ice cream for gelatis. He started his business in the mid-90s with a local restaurant there in Aloma. Italian ice and gelatis have been around for years, but he wanted to put his own mark with it. He took the land, these natural resources such as water and sugar and milk, and mixed them together using capital or machinery to make a newer product. Capital at the Jeremiah's Italian Ice can be anything from the cash registers to the ice cream scoopers to the machine that pushes out the ice cream or the refrigerators to keep it cold. Florida Virtual School wants you to understand that there are very many different types of business organizations. The most common form of business organization is a sole proprietorship. They're very popular because they're easier to start up. There are pros and cons to having a sole proprietorship. Some of the advantages of a sole proprietorship is you do not have to convince anybody else of your decision making. Whatever you decide, that's the choice that's being made. If the company is profitable, you are the one who takes in all the profit. However, there are drawbacks to sole proprietorships. Although they're easy to start up, you are going to be the one who puts in all the money. So that you're going to take all the risk. If something goes wrong, it's on you. You're the one who does have to make all those choices. A partnership is one of the least common forms of business organizations in the United States. Partnership requires 2 or more people to come in. Some people like the idea of a partnership because it brings in greater opportunity to raise money. It's not just one person putting in all the money, it's multiple people. If there's a decision to be made, sometimes it's a great idea to bounce that idea off of somebody else that you trust, like a partner. The drawbacks are, if there is a decision that you want to make, you just have to take the time in order to convince your other partners that it's the right choice to make. And if there is profitability to the business, that profit is split amongst the partners. A limited liability corporation or company is also relatively common in the United States. An example of a limited liability company is when someone wants to invest a certain amount of money into a business, but does not want to be tasked with the day-to-day operations. For example, if you wanted to open up a restaurant, maybe someone in your family is willing to give you a small amount of money, but they don't want to be part of actually working in the restaurant. This person would be considered a limited liability. They have just put forth some money. They're going to have no say in what happens during the restaurant. So if something goes bad, it's on you, the actual owner. The person who contributed the money, they have a limited liability. They're not going to be sued. They do have the ability to lose their investment, but that's it. Corporations, although aren't as plentiful as sole proprietorships in numbers, bring in a large amount, a far larger share of revenue and sales in the United States. Remember, there's only one Walmart corporation. However, there are thousands of Walmart stores. Corporations are owned by stockholders or shareholders. They are typically run by someone known as a chief executive officer or CEO. The board of directors chooses the CEO. The shareholders choose the board of directors. The CEO, with guidance from the board of directors, determines the direction and guidance of where the company should move. Should they open up a new product line? Should they open up a new headquarters? Should they begin to branch off or merge with another company? If a company becomes profitable over time, those profits are divided up amongst the shareholders. Shareholders do not share anything in common with the actual workers of the business, unless the business itself is owned by the shareholders and the workers collectively. These are known as co-ops. Florida Virtual School next wants us to take a look at the different forms of competition, all the way from the least amount of competition, a monopoly, where one company or one business owns the vast majority of the supply of a certain type of product. Examples in U.S. history have been the Standard Oil Company, owned by John D. Rockefeller. He owned roughly 90% of the U.S. oil supply and was considered a monopoly. Eventually, the United States government decided to break up the oil monopoly. They've also broken up Andrew Carnegie's steel monopoly. They did this to try and promote competition. With the idea of having more businesses to compete for customers, it would hopefully drive down prices and promote more advancements in technology for their products. An oligopoly is when you have 2 to roughly 5 or 6 different companies controlling the vast majority ownership of a business. Examples could be the automotive industry, where you have Ford, Toyota, Honda, and General Motors producing the vast majority of cars in the United States. Next, we have monopolistic competition, which could be similar to that of gas stations, where we could sit here and rattle off 10 different gas stations in our local community relatively easily. BP, Racetrack, Shell, Citgo, Sunoco, 7-Eleven, so on and so on. Pure competition doesn't technically exist in our society. However, the closest thing we have to it could be something like a farmer's market, where you have lots of buyers and lots of sellers that are able to compete on products that everyone is relatively familiar with. We all pretty much know the value or what is a carrot or a banana, and we can compete on that. Now, the harder the barrier it is to enter the market, the more likely it's going to have fewer and fewer businesses. As you get less and less competition, such as a monopoly, the more control of the price is given to the producer. The lower the price power of the business is going to be seen with greater amounts of competition. Now, sometimes monopolies can be seen as positive. For example, the utilities company. Many people do not have an option of where they gain their utilities, their electricity from. And that's okay because it's a government regulated business. I like the fact that there's only one set of power lines near my house. I don't want to have 15 sets of power lines right outside my window because 15 different companies are competing. That can be cumbersome. I also enjoy the fact that there's just one public bus system here, Lynx in Central Florida. I'm okay with that. I don't want to see 15 different bus companies all competing for the same few passengers, especially during rush hour. That can be a major inconvenience. Now, businesses that do have competition, not only do they compete over their products by lowering their prices, they also have versions of non-price competition. This is typically done through things like advertisement, but they're going to try and play on customers' emotions, whether it be through fear or otherwise. Coca-Cola might say we're better than Pepsi because we have, polar bears and other cartoons that say that we're great, or Pepsi might have these different celebrity endorsements, when in reality it's just brown sugar water. You can have the same thing be seen with the cars. Cars are trying to separate themselves by sleek styles and features, when in reality it's just a hunk of metal that gets you from point A to point B. But if a certain celebrity has an endorsement behind it, if they have a slightly different color or a style to the vehicle, it may want you to, or may get you to purchase that car over another one. Next thing they're going to take you a look at here is something called marginal analysis. Marginal just means one more additional unit of. Marginal analysis looks at the difference between your marginal cost, how much it costs to produce one more unit, and marginal benefit, the benefit you receive from producing or obtaining one more unit. I try and give the example of a pizza for marginal analysis. A pizza sold by the slice, say it costs $2 a slice. Well, people are going to stop purchasing pizza when the benefit they receive from that pizza no longer meets or exceeds their benefit. If the marginal cost of each slice of pizza is $2, you're going to continue to buy pizza as long as you believe that by eating that slice, you get more than $2 worth of benefit. For example, the first slice is always the best slice when you're really hungry. Maybe it brings you $5 worth of happiness. The second slice is still good, but maybe not as much. Maybe it only brings you $3 worth of happiness. The third slice is still pretty good because you're not full yet. Maybe it only brings you $2.25 worth of happiness, so you buy it. But that fourth slice, at that point in time, you're getting kind of full, and you think to yourself, it would only bring you $1 worth of happiness or $1 worth of benefit. Because the pizza cost $2, you say to yourself, no, I'm going to stop at 3 slices, and you don't buy it. Businesses operate in the same fashion. Their benefit is their marginal revenue. As long as their marginal cost, how much it costs to produce the item, is equal to or less than their marginal revenue, how much they're selling the item for, they will continue to make the item. Once their marginal cost, this upward sloping line here, is greater than their marginal revenue, the business is operating at a loss and they begin to lose profits. Profit maximization occurs when their marginal cost is equal to their marginal revenue. in order to maximize profit, you want to make sure that your marginal costs are not going to exceed your marginal revenue. When talking about costs, we have two different types of costs. We have a fixed cost and a variable cost. Fixed costs are going to be incurred whether you produce one item or 100 items. It's going to be the same. Variable costs, on the other hand, begin to increase as you make more of that product. Let's use a lemonade stand as an example. A table would be an example of a fixed cost. You have to buy one table, whether you sell 1 cup of lemonade or 100 cups of lemonade. Whereas lemons would be an example of variable costs. The more lemonade you sell, the more lemons you have to buy, and it increases with the number of cups. For businesses, a major variable costs are employees, as well as the resources. For the Ford Motor Company, you would see that the more cars that they produce, the more metal they have to buy and more workers they have to hire. However, they might be able to get away with just having one assembly line. Capital is oftentimes seen as a fixed cost, and they'll be able to pump out more and more cars without having to buy another assembly line until they reach a certain threshold. For businesses, they want to make sure that they have a total revenue, which is the price of the items times however many items they're selling. We want to make sure that total revenue is greater than their total cost, which is their fixed cost plus the variable cost. If this is true, then the company will be profitable. Next, Florida Virtual School wants us to discuss the labor market. Remember, businesses are going to be demanders of labor. Households will be suppliers of that labor. If businesses are demanding more and more labor, people will be able to sell their labor for a higher and higher price, thus raising wages for workers. The higher your skill set, the less likely there are other workers that are able to replace you. Therefore, more educated workers or more skilled workers are able to sell their labor for a higher price. Lastly, the Florida Virtual School wants us to take a look at the production possibilities curve in relationship to opportunity cost and production levels. An economy has the ability to produce two different things, pizza or spaghetti. For every unit of spaghetti they produce, they're going to be giving up the opportunity of producing 2 units of pizza because this is a ratio. It is a ratio of 1 spaghetti to 2 pizzas. If this company were to put all their resources in the production of pizza, they could make 10 pizzas and 0 spaghetti. But if they put all their resources into spaghetti, they can make 5 spaghetti and 0 pizzas. And this is true unless there is something known as economic growth through efficiencies or advances in technology. If the company were to acquire more resources or more capital, they'd be able to produce more. And the blue line would shift all the way out to the red line, allowing this company to be able to produce more units of pizza and more units of spaghetti. If they were to continue to have these advancements, the economic growth would continue again all the way out to the green line. You can continue to grow your economy or your business if you have more advances in technology, education, number of resources, or purchase more capital. Let's go ahead and take a look now at the Module 3. How has entrepreneurship helped shape American society? So in the Module 3 review notes, you saw numerous examples from John Washington Carver to Edward Schultz talking about how they've shaped America and what they've done. It's very obvious that we see major corporations impacting our society all the time with advertisements and large revenue sales. The best form of business organization is more of an opinionated question. If you're starting your own business and you're someone who wants to make your own decisions, sole proprietorship might be the best for you if you're somewhat of a risk taker. If you want to split up your risks and divide up your responsibilities, you might be more inclined to go with a partnership. If it's a business that requires a lot of money to be raised, you might have to sell parts of yourself off or sell stock. In this case, you'd want to go with a corporation. Monopolies can be beneficial or desirable by a government as long as it's in the best interest of its people. We need to be very careful with this because monopolies have the ability to exploit people by raising the prices, especially if this monopoly is on a product that is necessary for a living. Market structures such as sole proprietorships, partnerships, and corporations are constant in our lives. You see them advertisements for law offices or constantly with partnerships, Bogan, Munns and Munns, Morgan and Morgan. These are partnerships. Many professional organizations are partnerships, whether they're dentist office, doctor's offices, law firms, financial firms. But the visible portion of our life for many of us when we go to school is we're passing by all these major chain restaurants or chain stores like Walmart or Starbucks. The factors of production, remember, are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurial ability. Entrepreneurs is someone who's able to combine those four factors together. They have the idea of what they're going to do with those natural resources like sugar and water, food coloring to make Coca-Cola. They put it in the bottling manufacturing facility and using that capital, the tools and equipment, and the workers, the truck drivers and the bottlers to bring it all together. Marginal cost analysis is to make sure that we can have profit maximization. Profit maximization, if we remember, was where marginal cost is equal to that marginal revenue. Marginal being just one more additional unit of something. You want to make sure that you are always having your marginal benefit or your marginal revenue equaling or being greater than how much it costs you to produce one more unit of something. Otherwise, you're not going to be profitable. Profitability of a business must mean that their overall total revenue, which is their price times quantity, is exceeding their total costs. This is the combination of both their fixed costs and their variable costs. That brings us to a conclusion. I hope you guys learned something.